Let's go one step further. I explained earlier that we can turn on the stress response by thought alone. I also mentioned the scientific fact that the chemicals associated with stress pull the genetic trigger by creating a very harsh environment outside of ourselves, and thus creating disease. So, by pure reason, our thoughts can actually make us sick. If our thoughts can make us sick, might they also make us well? Let's say that a person has had some experiences within a short time frame that caused him to feel resentful. As a result of his unconscious reactions to those occurrences, he held on to his bitterness. Chemicals corresponding to this emotion flooded his cells. Over weeks, his emotion turned into a mood, which continued for months and changed into a temperament, which was sustained for years and formed a strong personality trait called resentment. In fact, he memorized this emotion so well that the body knew resentment better than the conscious mind, because he remained in a cycle of thinking and feeling and thinking, that way for years. That created the feelings of resentment, and vice versa. His body, as the unconscious mind, would be free from that emotional enslavement. In time, would he stop signaling the genes the same way? And finally, let's say he began thinking and feeling in new ways, to such a degree that he invented a new ideal for himself, related to a new personality. As he moved into a new state of being, might he signal his genes in beneficial ways and condition the body into an elevated emotional state, ahead of the actual experience of good health? Could he do this to the extent that the body would begin to change by thought alone? What I just described in simple terms happened to a student in one of my seminars who overcame cancer. Bill, 57, was a roofing contractor. A lesion had appeared on his face, and a dermatologist diagnosed malignant melanoma. Although Bill underwent surgery, radiation, and chemotherapy, the cancer recurred in his neck, then his side, and finally his calf. Each time he underwent a similar course of treatment. Naturally, Bill experienced why me moments. He understood that his excessive sun exposure was a risk factor, but he knew others who had been similarly exposed and didn't develop cancer. He fixated on that unfairness. After treatment for the same cancer on his left flank, Bill pondered whether his own thoughts, emotions, and behaviors had contributed to his condition. In a moment of self-reflection, he realized that for more than 30 years, he had been stuck in resentment, thinking and feeling that he always had to give up what he wanted for the sake of others. For example, he had wanted to become a professional musician after high school, but when an injury left his father unable to work, Bill had to join his family's roofing company. He habitually re-experienced his feelings upon being told he had to give up his aspirations, to the extent that his body still lived in that past. This also set up a pattern of dreams deferred. Whenever something didn't go his way, such as the housing market collapsing just after he expanded the business, he always found someone or something to blame. Bill had so memorized the emotional response pattern of bitterness that it dominated his personality and became an unconscious program. His state of being had signaled the same genes for so long that they had created the disease that now afflicted him. No longer could Bill allow his environment to control him. The people, places, and influences in his life had always dictated how he thought, felt, and behaved. He sensed that to break the bonds with his old self and reinvent a new one, he would have to leave his familiar environment. So for 2 weeks in Baja, Mexico, he retreated from his familiar life. The first 5 mornings, Bill contemplated how he thought when he felt resentment. He became a quantum observer of his thoughts and feelings. He became conscious of his unconscious mind. Next, he paid attention to his previously unconscious behaviors and actions. He decided to halt any thought, behavior, or emotion that was unloving towards himself. After the first week of this vigilance, Bill felt free because he had liberated his body from its emotional addiction to resentment. By inhibiting the familiar thoughts and feelings that had driven his behaviors, in a sense, he impeded the signals of the survival emotions from conditioning his body to the same mind. His body then released energy, which was available to use to design a new destiny for himself. For the next week, Bill became so uplifted that he thought about the new self he wanted to be, and how he would respond to the people, places, and influences that previously controlled him. For instance, he decided that whenever his wife and kids expressed a wish or need, he would respond with kindness and generosity, instead of making them feel like a burden. In short, he focused on how he wanted to think, act, and feel when presented with situations that had challenged him in the past. He was creating a new personality, a new mind, and a new state of being. Bill began to put into practice what he placed in his mind while sitting on that Baja beach. Shortly after his return, he noticed that the tumor on his calf had fallen off. In a week or so, when he went to his doctor, he was cancer-free. He has remained that way. By firing his brain in new ways, Bill changed biologically and chemically from his previous self. As a result, he signaled new genes in new ways, and those cancer cells couldn't coexist with his new mind, new internal chemistry, and new self. Once trapped by the emotions of the past, he now lives in a new future.